Good morning. I'm Chris Turner, candidate for state representative in District 9. Thank you, Shreveport Chamber, for having me here today. I'm a retired United States Marshal, 25 years in the U.S. Marshal Service. Prior to that, I was a Louisiana State Trooper and was in the Army National Guard for 9 years, deployed to Operation Desert Shield and Storm for the Gulf War, and I grew up in Halton, Louisiana. I'm a graduate of Halton High School, Bossier Parish Community College, and LSU Shreveport. My wife is a career educator. She's a principal at Platt Elementary School in Halton, and we have 2 grown children, both graduates of Louisiana Tech and Halton High School, and both engineers. Thank you for allowing me to be here today, and I appreciate you guys. I'm running for state representative in District 9 because I'm frustrated with the direction our state and national government are heading in. I'm not one to sit on the sidelines and complain without trying to get involved and make a difference. We have a lot of issues, and we seem to be backsliding as compared to other states in the region. We used to be able to kind of make fun of Mississippi for always being behind Louisiana, and I don't think that's the case anymore. I think that state's made a bunch of moves that have made them a better state, sadly, than we are right now. Crime's at an all-time high in Louisiana, and yet we continue to empty beds in our state prison system and scratch our head and wonder why it's at an all-time high. We're not a business-friendly state any longer. I'm a small business owner in Halton and have stood up a business in District 9 and understand how difficult of a task that can be. And we've got to ease some of the burdens, restrictions, and over-regulations on small business development and encourage that growth. Insurance, that's a tragic issue in the state of Louisiana right now. Not a lot of people seem to be talking about, but our insurance rates continue to skyrocket for both homeowners insurance and automobile insurance. We've got to get some smart people involved in that process. We need some integrity back in government service. I think I bring that, but the most important thing I bring is 30 years of experience in law enforcement and an intimate understanding of the crime problems in our state. And I know what needs to be done to fix that and to give first responders on the street the tools that they need to be able to lock up violent gun criminals and keep them off the streets. We have to get control of crime. We have to get control of crime. One of the first things we got to do. People do not want to stay or move to an area with high crime rates. That's one of the key building blocks to a community or a city or a parish that people want to live. So we got to tackle the crime problems. And then we, again, as I said before, we have to become more business friendly and encourage business growth in the area. The education system needs some work. We've got to get discipline back in the classrooms. We have to pay our police, fire, and teachers a competitive wage so we can recruit and retain the best and brightest in those fields to make a difference in our communities. And I think without those key building blocks, I think everything else is irrelevant. I think we need stronger leadership in this part of the state in Baton Rouge representing us. And I think with that stronger leadership, I think we need a cohesive team that understands those problems and knows what to work for as a group to try to get some of those resources pushed back up this way. That being said, yes, there were significant strides made in funding capital outlay and critical infrastructure projects in the state. Unfortunately, a lot of those weren't in our area. We missed out on a significant amount of money with record budget surpluses in the last 2 years alone. I think we exceeded $3 billion in surpluses, and of those surpluses, District 9 did not get a single penny of them. And Halton is the fastest growing municipality the second fastest growing municipality north of I-10 behind Woodworth. Bossier Parish is the fastest growing parish north of I-10. And we're one of the heaviest taxed parishes, and yet we get very little in return for our investment. We've got to get effective leaders down there that understand the problems and know what to fight for, and know how to accomplish those tasks and get it done and get more of that stuff funded back in our area. I think we need to sunset that 0.45 cent sales tax. The reason we had a budget surplus in the last 2 years is because we were overtaxed. Again, referring back to the region as related to states, we're slipping rapidly behind surrounding states because we overtax our people in the state. And I would love to see our state income tax go away. I think that's a key factor in businesses wanting to set up in an area and people wanting to move to an area like Louisiana. We've got to figure out other ways to fund our budget items. We get into the gambling industry. 20 years ago, I think our leaders promised lots of money for education on the backs of passing gambling initiatives in the state, and that money never seemed to make it where it was promised. We've got to get serious about directing our critical resources, being our money, to the areas that we have to fund and start looking at ways of getting rid of some of the fluff in our budget. I think it's definitely important to address. We have some literacy issues in this state, and I think we need to focus on starting at a young age and teaching children how to read. So directing some of our budget money into those areas specifically or primarily in the metropolitan areas where you have a denser population base will make a difference. I'll refer back to a law that came out of this last session about retaining children in the 3rd grade and not allowing them to pass if they can't read at a 3rd grade level. I think that passed in the legislature. My wife being a career principal or career educator and a principal for the last 14 years, I ran that bill by her, and she told me it was a terrible law, and I was like, why is that a terrible law? And she said, well, they obviously didn't get any input from educators because we don't teach reading in the third grade. That should have been the second grade. And so I think we need input from career educators to come up with plans that actually work and not just throwing money at a problem and expecting good results as a result of that. I'm a firm believer that we need a two-track system in our schools, and I really think that probably needs to start at the middle school level. Not every kid wants to go to college, and so not every kid should be prepared to go to college. Our trades are suffering, and our trades are critical to the success of our country and to the strength of our country, and we need to promote that. I think for whatever reason, for the last 30 or 40 years, it's been looked down upon. I think the push has been to try to get every kid in college, and that doesn't need to happen. We need to encourage the trade school route for those kids that don't either have the desire or the testing aptitude to go to college. There's still extremely well-paying jobs in the trades, and I think Bossier Parish has done a tremendously good job in doing that at the high school level with the Bipstel facility that they have in Bossier. And I think we need to see more of that implemented around the state. That's a fact. We're not getting a fair share of our resources back in this area. And as I mentioned before in a previous question, we have to have a stronger delegation, a smarter delegation, and we have to have some strong leaders that can go down there and build solid relationships on the floor of the House and with the state government to help direct as a team those resources back to our area. I think as a team we need to prioritize the critical needs, the roads that are in the worst shape, the industries and the infrastructure items that need the most attention, and as a group focus on those and secure that funding for those issues. We've got one of the only level 1 trauma centers in this part of the country, to be honest with you. I think the next one may be in Jackson and Dallas. We need to make sure we protect the LSU Ochsner Hospital system. We need to make sure that they're funded. We've got a port that's growing. Our roads are in terrible disrepair, and we have to prioritize that state money on fixing those issues. We're one of the most natural resource rich states in the country. I think we have to embrace and fully support the oil and gas industry and make sure that they want to come set up business in Louisiana. They want to stay in Louisiana. I have a lot of friends that are in that sector of business in the state. And many of their companies are considering leaving Louisiana. because of the tax burdens that are placed on them and because of the high insurance rates. So we have to get that under control to encourage them to stay and to set up here. And we have to support them expanding into other natural resource sectors such as lithium production, which Arkansas has fully embraced. I think there's a lot of potential in North Louisiana to extract lithium from a lot of the existing wells that we have in our area and new wells that are being drilled. I think we need to make the permitting process easier for them to get those wells in the ground, and we need to encourage that business growth. That being said, I'm not a green energy proponent. I think the green energy issue has turned into a leftist religion, and I think we need to be realistic about the capabilities of green energy and the timeline on when some of that stuff can actually be implemented effectively. I think it's being pushed on us too rapidly, and I think the ice storms that we had proved that in Texas when all the solar grids that they set up over there failed and couldn't keep up. I just think we need to be realistic in how we address that as an outdoorsman. Protecting our environment is critically important, but we have to be realistic about how we can do that. And I don't think the green energy sector is at that level right now, and that makes it all that more important that we embrace the oil and gas industry and make sure that they're producing at levels that'll help the state and help our country. That's a new issue for me. I mean, obviously, as a career U.S. Marshal, I've worked in a lot of these impoverished neighborhoods, probably more so than a lot of people, so I've seen it firsthand. There is a need for that, as long as it can be done by protecting the rights of the citizens without infringing on them unnecessarily. I think if landowners are not compliant with keeping property standards up to where they need to be, then streamlining the laws to give those municipalities the ability to clean them up at a faster rate is not a bad idea. And as long as it's done properly, I would support something like that. Yes, and thank you for allowing me to answer that question. The criminal justice problem that we have in this state is tragic, and it's fixable. And sadly, our leadership is going in the opposite direction in addressing it. Our Republican-led legislature in 2017 passed a bill package of 10 bills called the Justice Reinvestment Act, JRA. And the majority of those bills were a mistake. I think the only elected sheriff in the state at the time that spoke out against them was Sheriff Prater, and I think he got attacked for speaking up against it. But he was right. It was an effort, I think, to save money in the Department of Corrections, and it effectively emptied half the beds in the state prison system. And police on the street can't have an effect on violent crime if they're arresting the same violent criminals over and over again. And I want my daughter and my wife and those that are near and dear to me to be able to go to the mall or go to the grocery store or go get gas without having to worry about something happening to them all the time. Violent criminals are armed. early in my career, it was uncommon to find armed criminals when we encountered them. Before I retired, it was uncommon if they weren't armed, and sometimes with multiple weapons. So we need to be able to protect them. We need to push constitutional carry through so our citizens can protect themselves and those around them. But we also need to address the juvenile justice system. It's broken. OJJ has no facilities or no sufficient facilities around the state to house violent juvenile offenders. And places in Louisiana are having to go to Alabama and other states to find bed space to house violent juvenile offenders. But with a $3 billion surplus in the last 2 years in our budget, nobody saw that as a priority or an issue that needed to be addressed. We need to start focusing on that. We need to start putting some regional juvenile justice facilities around the state to give these state and local facilities a place to put violent juveniles and to free up bed space in our other juvenile detention facilities where we can get some kids in there that are rehabilitatable and have a chance to get back on track. Right now you can't do that. There's no place to put them and there's nothing you can do with them, and I think it encourages them to follow a criminal path. And so I think that's something that we need to get serious about, and I think that's something that I bring to the table that's unique, that's not on the floor of the legislature right now.